Okay, well, thank you for joining our community conversation today. It's wonderful to see such an incredible turnout. I would like to introduce myself. I am Besma Alawi with the Community Sponsorship Hub, the organization leading the implementation of the Department of State program, Welcome Corps. Welcome Corps is a public-private partnership that empowers Americans like you and me to welcome refugees to the United States. To date, we have more than 130,000 Americans have signed up to welcome refugees through this program. This remarkable number reflects the generosity of people across the nation who are forming groups, committing their time and their own resources, and ensuring that refugees are warmly integrated into their local communities. I am really excited to share that the program continues to grow stronger with an increasing number of applications coming in daily, further confirming our collective commitment to this vital work. In addition to the grassroots efforts, Welcome Corps has expanded last year into really higher education and corporate sectors through the launch of Welcome Corps on campus and Welcome Corps at work. Universities and businesses across the countries are stepping up to join this movement and really further amplifying its impact. Today, we are honored to have to hear from inspiring leaders who are shaping the future of community sponsorship, who also have led this kind of effort in the past, whether on campuses, workplace, or through philanthropy and grassroots efforts. We have Dr. Dia Abdu today, the founding director of Every Campus a Refuge, who will share how campuses nationwide are becoming transformative space of learning and belonging for refugees. Her work illustrates the power of education to foster empathy, advocacy, and lasting connection. We also have Mark Wolf, a Welcome Corps sponsor from New York, who will share his own experience on the joys and challenges of sponsoring refugees' families, and really showing how local acts of kindness create ripple effects of a global impact. We have also Betsy Fisher, a U.S. Director of Talent Beyond Boundaries, who will illuminate how workplace can really champion refugees integration, transforming professional network into pathways of opportunity and storytelling. And Gregory, who is the director at the Open Society Foundation, who will connect global insight to local impact, drawing on really lesson learned from community sponsorship programs worldwide to inspire action here in the US. I really ask you, as you listen to these stories and the work that these leaders are doing, I invite you to reflect on two things. How can their experiences inspire your own journey? And how can you be part of this growing movement of welcome? This work have been proving that system can and should work for people, compassion, innovation, and courage, and driving this movement forward. And each of you has a role to play. So I want to start my discussion now. And I wanted really to start with Mark. Mark, I would love actually to share how your sponsor groups have worked together. And I say sponsor groups, not one, because you have already have welcomed multiple families and supporting multiple groups all at the same time. How your groups have been working together to create welcoming and supportive environment for newcomers, and how has this been key to your group success in fostering dignity and connection?
Thank you, Basma. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. So I am part of the Otsego Refugee Resettlement Coalition. It's a group that formed actually before Welcome Corps. So a number of us in faith communities and in other community organizations in Oneonta, New York, were interested in doing what we could to help refugees resettle here in the United States. And specifically here in Otsego County in upstate New York, we all recognize the humanitarian need to help refugees. But in the case of Otsego County, we're losing population. We're losing tax dollars because we don't have enough children in our schools, and employers are struggling to find workers. And so we came at this both from the perspective of how can we help people in need, but also how can we build our communities? And so we started meeting well before Welcome Corps became available. We had worked with refugee resettlement agencies nearby. We were shadowing them, getting their advice, trying to figure out what we could do to prepare ourselves. And when Welcome Corps became a reality in 2023, we had pretty much done a lot of the legwork. So we were able to reach out to community leaders. We worked with our mayor. We worked with our local county. Um, we held fundraisers. We filmed. We screened films. We did a lot of outreach to the local community. One thing in particular that I think was really effective was right before we welcomed our first group in July of 2023. That was the time when New York City was struggling with asylum seekers coming to the United States, and the city trying to locate them upstate. And a lot of county executives were opposed to that. Were basically passing legislation locally to prevent that from happening. And we recognized we're upstate. It's a very red district up here. A lot of Republican voters. And so we reached out to our county board and said, look, we would just like to explain what we're trying to do. We want refugees to come here. We're supporting them both with our time and also with our resources. And we wanted to explain the Welcome Corps program to our local elected officials, and so I got an invitation to speak at a county board meeting. We got a lot of support from both Republicans and Democrats in our very red district. And so I guess the takeaway is that there's a lot of rhetoric right now against immigration, but I think if people are persuadable. I think if you explain to them, why you're doing this, that it's grassroots, and that we are raising our own funds where we don't rely on federal tax dollars. I think that's a compelling case, and I think it reassures a lot of people who are concerned about immigration in general. Yes, we've had lots of success, and we're looking forward to welcoming more people. We've been assured to welcome a new family, and we're just hoping we hear from the travel dates any day now.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I have heard it multiple times in multiple area that actually we started this work before the federal government started the program. So it's really the federal government is just responding to the local community effort that's already existing. Thank you, Mark. I wanted to bring in also Dr. Dia to speak about the power of really higher education. And I actually invite all of the speakers to have your camera on and really engage. This is more a community conversation. I don't want it to treat it as a panel. Please jump in to respond to any comment from other speakers as well. But yeah, like you have started a movement of really bringing and expanding resettlement to campuses, and it's really now many universities and colleges have been really engaged in this work. I had the privilege to attend your convening in the last couple of months and have seen how many universities have been opening their doors to resettle refugees and really solving some of the housing issue that we have been hearing about. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And it's great to see Mark here, who is also a fellow in this space of really mobilizing the incredibly rich and robust communities that are colleges and universities across the country. I like to remind people that there are 4,000 colleges and universities across the United States, nearly in every town and in every city. So that gives you an idea of where we can continue to expand welcome and where we can continue to receive newcomers. I also want to begin by saying that I'm Palestinian and my parents are refugees. So for me, this is very personal. I grew up understanding that to be a refugee meant that you were always looking for a home, a place to belong, to be safe, and to feel secure, and to feel like you have finally found your family. I'm also an immigrant to America. And to me, this also means that I feel and have experienced America as a place of welcome. So I see the promise and the premise of America as a welcoming place, as a place of opportunity, very deeply and very personally. So 10 years ago, when we were deep in the middle of the Syrian refugee crisis, I heard Pope Francis call on every parish to host a refugee family. And I was really inspired by this idea of radical hospitality. That's what it comes down to. For a small community to embrace the stranger, to welcome the other, because it's the right thing to do. And so I was teaching at Guilford College, and we decided to respond to that call of radical hospitality. And we welcomed first a Ugandan gentleman on our campus, and then a Syrian family, and then another Syrian family. And we've welcomed many refugee families on our campus since then. Most recently, 3 days ago, a family from Venezuela, a mom and a dad and 3 kids. And what I've seen over and over again is how hungry to help and to welcome the community is every time we say we're welcoming a family. All we have to do is put out the call to say, hey, a new family is arriving to this country. We're opening our doors for them. We'd like your help, and we receive everything that we ask for. In 2021, we welcomed 16 Afghan evacuees, and you should have seen the outpouring of love and support. And so I'm really energized by these ready-made one-stop shop communities across the country that have everything needed, that have housing, that have facilities and amenities, and very importantly, students. So one very practical and really important thing to do is let's get our students involved. I always say the best affinity groups to refugees are students, because students who are coming to a new university, they know what it's like to want to belong. They're looking for their people. They are trying to find community, so they get it. So students love getting involved. I want to tell one small story about this work of welcome and its impact. And I also want to echo Mark when he said this work began before Welcome Corps, but it really anticipates this immense welcoming spirit of America. So every campus of refuge started in 2016. We thrived under the last Trump administration. And so I want to emphasize for folks that this is really about the American spirit of welcome and hospitality that persists and that resists and that will always be there. But one of the stories that I love to tell is about a campus in Pullman, Washington. It's Washington State University. And Pullman, Washington is a very small town. They had never experienced refugee resettlements before until they started hosting Afghan refugees. And they are currently hosting their 4th Afghan family, which apparently this family requested to be hosted by Washington State University by name. So that tells you that the word is getting out there, that there is welcome, that there's hospitality. And it's really wonderful to see that universities are participating and using the resources that are at their disposal to be part of this welcoming spirit of America.
Thank you so much, Dia. And I just want to uplift, if in the audience there is any students or people who are close to colleges, there are 4,000 universities, right? Who we need to really tap on and really connect with and make sure that they are aware of the work happening to welcome refugees. I want to go to Gregory. Gregory, you have been really a leader in the sponsorship, community sponsorship space, really not just in the US, but globally. And you were able to really bring your vision and mission to the US. And I really wonder how you can help our audience understand the global perspective around community sponsorship, the support that community sponsorship get from the world, and how we can really learn in the US from these lessons, given also the transition in government we are having at the moment.
Thank you, Basma. Thanks, everyone. Really a pleasure
Also,
to.
Gregory, I will say you have a beautiful personal story. It's up to you if you would like to share it as well.
Okay. But thanks, Basma, and really a pleasure to be here with you. And I'll just keep it brief. In many ways, it's actually the rest of the world that's learning from the US right now. You, Basma, opened up by citing a figure of 130,000 sponsors. And I would like to challenge that and point out, as a member of several groups just to take one of our groups, we have 5 people listed on the application because that's what the application asks for. But in practice, there's a core group of about 15 people and a much larger group of people who contribute in really meaningful ways. So even in the 1 year or so that the program has been open, you're looking at about 500,000 people, I would guess, who feel as if they're sponsors and part of these groups. And that doesn't begin to incorporate the many others who contribute. So, you know, we have a mailing list for one of our groups of almost 200 people who have in one way or another contributed. So this is a really big movement. And once you start to also realize that it's not just the Welcome Corps, but also the other sponsorship programs that this administration has started, which have generated well over 3 million applications at this point, you realize what has happened in just the space of 2.5 years in the United States. And that move is not going away at all. And I think that it's important to, you know, understand what is fueling that movement and what that movement is accomplishing. And just, I'll make those points, which is that when we first started working on sponsorship, maybe a decade ago, it was, I used to frame it as a response to both the global refugee crisis. It was just before the Syrian refugee crisis in the Mediterranean, but also a response to the loneliness crisis, which has only gotten worse in the 10 years since. People wanted to do something meaningful together. They didn't want to just be behind their mobile phones, being basically, you know, polarized by algorithms on social media sites. They wanted to be physically in their community. They wanted to be with their neighbors. They wanted to do something that would really express themselves, but also be meaningful for not just them, but their families and their communities. And refugee sponsorship is exactly that. It is about the refugees and providing a warm welcome to the United States, but it's also about bringing people together around a common cause and binding them into community in a way that is really hard these days to do. Another sort of, I think, aspect of it is its ability to break down or to generate conversations across differences, across political differences, across differences of faith, that at a moment, as I mentioned, when polarization is defining our politics, has a really important role to play in moderating this country's political conversation. And I've taken it recently even further in really thinking about the Welcome Corps as a tool to reanimate democracy, because I think one of the reasons we're so disenchanted with our politics is that Washington seems so far away, and Washington is controlling things. Look at refugee resettlement. Washington has been controlling how refugee resettlement has been done for the past 44 years, 44 years, since 1980. And this program takes the power back to the people when it comes to how refugees are resettled in the country. The sponsorship groups, for the most part, almost all of them, are naming refugees, and they're the ones who are doing the work on the ground, including raising money, but just doing the more important work of weaving newcomers into communities. That's one of the problems that's, I think, you know, been plaguing our country, is that this is now a country that is governed, frankly, by people who don't really know what's going on the ground. And this program allows the people to shape national policy. And I'll also, you know, just note that you asked about the sort of international impact. It's not only shaping how U.S. refugee resettlement is done. In a year, well, I mean, if you include all the sponsorship programs, including those that are for parole sponsorship, more people will have been resettled in the United States over the past 2 years through those programs than through the entire refugee program this century, right? You're talking about a massive increase in capacity in the United States. So that's, you know, really important here, but also the success of these programs, and especially the Welcome Corps, has had an impact in other countries. Other countries are looking at the United States and saying, wait, we're obviously doing something wrong. We can only, you know, resettle a few thousand people, take the United Kingdom, but once you unlock the potential of just everyday people to do this work instead of telling them that you are not good enough. You don't know how to do this work, which is one of the things that just drives me nuts when I hear people say that, sponsor groups aren't equipped to do the work. I just think, actually, most sponsors have raised families, which is a really hard task. When you bring, 5, 10, 15 people together who've raised their own families, I guarantee you that they have much more wisdom and experience and capacity to do this work than a government-run system. So I'll leave it there and say that I think, concern that lots of folks have is the program might, in a political transition, go away. I'm confident that it will survive. So I think people should just be, doing the work that they care about. That will have an impact in their communities. Every dinner table conversation, every meeting that you have with your local faith groups or your local Lions clubs, you talk about it, and it changes the way that people think about newcomers. They're not abstract people crossing the border. They are people who are being welcomed into the community and eased into it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gregory. And I echo you. I believe this work will continue. And as you mentioned, this is have been nonpartisan support for this effort globally, but also in the US. We have sponsors from all walk of life have been taking part of welcoming through the program. And just to uplift Leah, talking about your personal experience, I came to this work in 2016, really because I have seen the importance of having grassroots efforts in really protecting welcoming work. And since then, I have been seeing the impact of our really communities and the grassroots efforts in really protecting refugee resettlement effort overall. I live in the state of Florida. We were able to continue to welcome refugees no matter what administration we have, and we will continue to do this work no matter what. So to Gregory's point, we believe that this work will continue, and at this point, take action. Sponsor a refugee you know or you don't know. Share your story and tell the world why you are doing this work. Do be like Mark and advocate for the continuation of these programs. So you do have a role every day to support this work, and we count on you to do it. Betsy, you have been mobilizing businesses to really take part of welcoming refugees. And I think to Mark's point, which I, as a refugee, really love, it's not just the right thing to do, not because we want to really save lives and support refugees, but we do need refugees in our communities. So I would love to hear from you, Betsy, about the power of corporates and business partners in welcoming refugees and how their voices really can shape the continuation of this work.
Thanks, Basma, and thanks for having me. That's exactly right. So at Talent Beyond Boundaries, we're working with our partners at IRC on a program called Welcome Core at Work, which is supporting businesses to meet their workforce needs by working with people who are displaced, and then also partnering with community sponsors. So it's a match between businesses, refugees who have the skills that those businesses need, and then members of the community who support those individuals in welcoming. I will not challenge Thea's point that campuses are the best welcomers. I think that's right. But I think that businesses have an incredible role to play as well. When you think about what people need when they're arriving in a new community, having the opportunity to work, to have, to restore that kind of rhythm, to return to their occupational interests and careers is a huge part of what it means to belong to a new community. And an employer can also be an important part of that person's new social network. I think many of us have had the experience of moving to a new place and connecting with our coworkers as a key part of our social fabric. So we think that businesses have an enormous role to play, first by by doing the right thing, but also because they need the help. We've been talking to employers all over the country, and we're seeing a lot of interest specifically in small and rural areas where they might have a hard time attracting workers. And in some cases, those communities where there's a warm social fabric, where everybody knows each other's name, and where cost of living is affordable, is actually a much better fit than a big city for someone who's arriving. Obviously, everyone's needs and interests and preferences will be different. different, but we think that rural and smaller communities in this country have so much to offer newcomers and also have so much to benefit. My family's from rural Michigan, and I know that the people responsible for taking care of my grandparents were largely from outside the US. And there's a real need and a lot of self-interest in our communities and as a country to ensure that we have the workforce to continue to be able to grow. Just one final avenue is that for businesses who are looking to offer engagement for their existing staff, there can be a great way to get a group of volunteers together to support their staff to be engaged in sponsorship or in volunteering in some other way for welcoming. It's a great way to bring your staff and community together to spend an afternoon or to take the project of welcoming as a sponsor group. It's such a good way to bring your team together and encourage your staff engagement as well.
Thank you, Betsy, for sharing. And I just want to remind people that they can use the Q&A section to really continue to add questions. And I know my team is doing their best to answer some of them. I think I have one more question because of time, and I want to make time for us to answer some of the questions we are receiving in the chat. We are really in a great time around the year, celebrating Thanksgiving and really celebrating different holidays between now and end of the year. I will share that when I was welcomed in Florida back in 2010, my first Thanksgiving meal was an invitation from a Jewish community member who put me in a round table with another Christian family, and I brought my family who are Muslim into the table, and that's for me was the first time I was interacting with three religious community in one table, sharing a meal and really sharing the stories of the generosity of welcoming community, but also for them to share how their ancestor came as immigrants and refugees and how they are making in their table a space for me to have. The other story from Thanksgiving time and vibe is one of my students when I was teaching. They delivered since I think 2014 until this day a pecan pie in my door every year that's made at home, thanking me for choosing Jacksonville to stay in. And these for me, the stories that I want to give back with. I want to make sure that I am celebrating refugees. I am myself welcoming and sponsoring refugees. And because of the American generosity, to be honest, I am where I am now. So I want to call on all of you speakers to share what stories you have around any of the holiday season we are in now. And also, I think for Mark and Gregory, you are now welcomed already a refugee family through the Welcome Corps. Are you planning anything with them? How you are educating them about the holidays? And what are you doing during this time?
Mark, you go first.
Okay. So I have not been, we've only been doing this for about a year, and last Thanksgiving I had to travel for Thanksgiving, but I have something that's almost as good. We celebrated the birthday of one of our newcomers, I think last fall, and that was the first time they got to eat pizza. So we celebrated the birthday, had pizza, had cake, exchanged gifts and good wishes. And I think that was a moment where we all sort of came together and appreciated the work we were doing together, both those of us in our coalition who were welcoming newcomers and our newcomers who realized that they were finding a place that they could call home. And of course we were building friendships as well too, and those have continued.
Thank you, Mark.
So,
Gregory?
yeah, I mean, I would say that we are just at the start of resettling a family of 7 from Afghanistan. And so just the basic needs of getting them their medical clearances and getting them into schools and working on employment is really preoccupying us. And if that weren't enough, we were also asked whether we would be willing to take another family in the next next 2 months, since there are so many refugees who are vetted and identified to come to the United States, but who might not have the chance under the next administration to reach here. So we're also debating that and have agreed to do that, even though it's right on the heels of this other family. So I am sure we will come up with some great Thanksgiving ideas in the next 72 hours.
It's a good challenge. Thank you, Gregory. Betsy, Leah.
Yeah, I love sharing this story actually. So, because I'm also a newcomer to this country, we really never celebrated Thanksgiving. And then when we started sponsoring and hosting refugee families on Guilford's campus, one of the first families that we hosted was an Iraqi family, a family of 5, so mom, dad, and 3 kids. And you know, Thanksgiving was around the corner. We weren't celebrating Thanksgiving; they weren't celebrating Thanksgiving, and we thought, why not celebrate it together, right? Like, you know, it was a really interesting way for me myself, like someone who's been in America here for a while, to find a new meaning for Thanksgiving. And so this was in 2017. This family actually arrived a week before the Muslim ban in 2017. So we had our first Thanksgiving with them in 2017. And every year since, they are the family that we celebrate Thanksgiving with. We don't do turkey because we don't like turkey. We do shrimp and we do chicken. So we do Thanksgiving our own way. But that's what I love about this, is that this holiday really is about bringing people to the table to celebrate what community means to us and what we've made out of it. And that's what I love about this, is that the flexibility of what this holiday means. Of course, it has a lot of meanings, and it's really important to remember the history behind it, but what it's come to mean for newcomers, and for immigrants and for refugees. The mother in the family, Marwa, shared with me a little piece of paper. You know, sometimes they ask elementary school children to write down what is their favorite thing, like the holiday, what do they do? And so she sent me a screenshot of her son Yusuf's answer to his teacher about, you know, his favorite holiday. And he said that it was Thanksgiving because they get to come to our house and he spends it with our girls. And, you know, they eat mashed potatoes and it was just so lovely to see that small act of just coming together that one day every year, what it means to folks about their place in this country.
And I might go in a slightly different direction. You know, I think I'm in this work in large part because my parents were really active in welcoming, but my first role working with refugees directly, I was living in Amman, Jordan, which is not a place that gets a lot of rainfall or is has a lot of infrastructure for significant rainfall events. I was assisting refugees who lived in Jordan in immigration processes. And I was in the neighborhood where a lot of my clients lived, which was, you know, a neighborhood with a lot of poverty and without a lot of infrastructure, because that's where they could afford to live. And I got caught in a rainstorm that I probably should have expected, but didn't, and got caught in just an absolute deluge and showed up looking like a a very sad creature of some sort. I needed to talk to my clients about some matters related to their case, and I showed up looking completely bedraggled, and it was cold, and I was quite dirty because of all the material on the street that was kind of flooding. And they opened the door and said, "Oh my goodness, come on in." They turned on the heat, which they, you know, did not have resources to pay for. They turned on their soba room heater. They made me a bowl of hot lentil soup, and they gave me a pair of brand new socks, which I still have. And it was just such a moving experience. You know, they were taking me in from the cold, and really giving from resources that they didn't have to make sure that I was okay. Yes, a happy Thanksgiving to come as well, I hope.
Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Leah, I have the same feeling with the turkey, but we have been doing turkey shawarma, which is make it little different with a lot of spice. So we do have many questions, but I want to make sure we go over some of these questions and maybe some really call to action from each speakers. So while I am navigating the question and seeing which one is need to be answered and which one is our team is answering, I do want each speaker really to unmute and share one call to action to the audience we have today. Feel free really to have it to your own work, but also in the vibe of things, even to give people some really good call to action and productive call to action to support refugees and welcome refugees. So who want to start? Leah.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I've learned through the work of campuses and having so many people involved, because when you are welcoming a family, a refugee family on a campus, a lot of people who've never met refugees get involved. And one of the things that you learn very quickly is that once you meet a person, you actually get to know that person and meet them. It's very hard then to not see them and not to humanize them and not to ground their experience in our shared humanity. One of the stories that I love to tell is on Guildford's campus. We host a family in a campus house, and so when something breaks down in the house, a person from our facilities goes to fix it. And the people who work in our facilities offices, as you can imagine, they are local folks. It's very highly possible, and in this case, it was possible, and that's what happened. This person had never met a refugee before. Anyway, so this person went to the house to fix the washing machine, was able to meet the family, was invited, of course, to lunch, and they got to know each other. And then this person visited me in my office and said, thank you for this experience. And then, he said, what I realized was that they were just like me, which is obviously such a simple realization, but so crucial. Because when we talk about large numbers, like 120 million people are displaced, it's so hard to see the individuals. So a call to action is, please try as much as possible to bring people together, refugees with non-refugees. Because once you meet a refugee, it is very hard for you to believe the myths and the negative discourses and the rhetoric about immigrants and refugees. So getting to know people, getting as much as possible, bringing people together to get to know each other personally is such an important step in being able to dispel those very dangerous myths and discourses around newcomers.
Thank you, Dia. Please take it on. I am working on the questions.
Sure.
That's
I think I'll speak to anyone here who might be a business or an employer. I think it's a great time to check in with your staff who are newcomers to the U.S., with your employees, and see how they're feeling. Are they nervous? Are they anxious? What are they worried about, and how can you support them? One thing we've seen some employers do that is really incredible is saying, we know that you're a newcomer to the U.S. and that you've been displaced. Are there members of your family that you would want to sponsor, and how can we support you? Are there other people who work here who would be eligible to sign up as sponsors in a Welcome Corps group, and how can we provide financial support? That's amazing. Ensuring that people know where to go if they need legal assistance over the next few months. That's amazing too. But I think it's also just a really good time to check in and offer support and reassurance, regardless of your politics or their politics, knowing that people are feeling a lot of anxiety about changes that are coming, and just expressing that you're happy to have people on your team, that you are with them over whatever may be coming, and that you're willing to support them and their families. I think that's fantastic.
Gregory, maybe in 1 minute, any call to action from you?
Sorry, maybe if you don't mind, maybe I'll address some of these questions, because there is obviously some anxiety, as is understandable, about what might happen with the next administration. And maybe this is where I can call on my experience over the past, almost decades, starting programs like this in over 15 countries. This is not a partisan program. I will actually say that I think that we've had much more traction in countries with conservative governments. It doesn't surprise me. The passion around migrants, as you said, Dia, earlier, comes from often from faith traditions. And there's another really important source of sponsors and a sense of conviction around refugees, which is the military. People who've served in the armed forces feel very strongly about being able to provide protection to those who fought alongside of them, those who supported them overseas. There isn't comprehensive research on the pool of sponsors, but my anecdotal experience is that it is absolutely cross-partisan, cross-faith, and it might even lean more conservative than progressive, if those terms mean anything today. So, yes, it would be foolish not to acknowledge that the last time around, many of the people who will be in this administration were advocates for shutting down the refugee program. They did pause it. It never shut down. It just went down gradually to, in the last year of the past administration, to 11,000. But that was before the Welcome Corps existed. And the Welcome Corps is a kind of market test, right? It's one thing to say the US government shouldn't just decide top down, as I said earlier, to bring in refugees. It's quite another thing when there's hundreds of thousands of people, millions, depending on how you count them, who have said, we're willing to do the work. As Mark said, we're here to raise the money. We're willing to do the work. It's important to us. It's important to our communities. It's not just important for the refugees. It's important to who we are and how we engage with our community and our country. And so I do think that it should not be a given that the program will be paused. I think it matters enormously what the people on this call and all the sponsors do in terms of reaching out to people who have influence to be able to share how important it is for you that this program continue. So that's my call to action. Thanks.
Thank you, Gregory.
And I can follow up on that. So in supporting refugees by helping them establish themselves, like taking them to the DMV, taking them to the Department of Social Services, helping them find employment, I have to work with other people in my community who are already here. And initially, there's a little bit of hesitancy and fear for the reasons like, many people have not met refugees before, have not met people from outside the county for that matter. And when they do interact, there's always a connection that's established. I have two anecdotes. One is one of our recent newcomers, I had to take him to the DMV 5 times in order to get him a state ID in New York. And the reason was because the local DMV office in Cooperstown was getting mixed messages, mixed instructions from state government. And so we'd go in there each time and they look at me and they kind of go, oh. And then, but they and I said, look, I know you're just doing your job and we'll figure this out. And we had back channels to state government, so we were able to sort of sort the whole thing out. But, through the whole process, I think everyone just kind of recognized that we're all in this together and it's new and we're trying to figure it out. And so that was kind of reassuring because, like I said, we live in a county. The other experience I can share is one of our refugees was struggling to find employment, and I would drop in on them from time to time and just help them sort through their mail and figure out what they need to do next. And I said, we haven't checked on jobs lately. Let's go down to the employment office and just see if anything's in there. So we walk in there, and the people there were very friendly, very helpful. And the woman who runs the office there said, oh, I just got a call from a local restaurant. They need a dishwasher. And I said, well, you want to do that? And he goes, yeah, I'll take a look. He ended up getting the job that day. I mean, like I drove him to the restaurant. We met the owner. The owner interviewed him, was very impressed, and hired him on the spot. And so it's just those little things like that that are just like reassuring. Like people want newcomers. There's all this rhetoric swirling around the United States. But if it's at the grassroots level and there's a need, and there are needs in the local community for new people, we're going to meet that. And so I think it's really it's a great opportunity even when we're going through a period of transition and we don't know what's going to happen, I am pretty sure that, you know, people are going to still want to welcome refugees. That's not going to change.
Thank you so much. I know our team is answering questions as they come in the Q&A section. I also, you have heard the answers from the speakers about some of the questions that's been coming. I think one question for you, Mark, someone is asking, I would love to hear from Mark how he has felt Welcome Corps has improved his ability to welcome refugees to the US since he has experienced pre and post Welcome Corps program.
Well, so we wanted to work with a local refugee agency before Welcome Corps. We were actually hoping to do co-sponsorship and become kind of like a satellite organization to a resettlement agency. But it turned out that wasn't going to be feasible because we're just too far away from where the agency was. And so Welcome Corps changed everything because it empowered us to do something that we wanted to do, but the existing infrastructure wasn't allowing us to do it. And so we learned a lot with our partnership with the resettlement agency, but it's Welcome Corps that basically made it possible for us to actually do the work that we wanted to do.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I do want to really wrap up, and our team will continue to answer questions in the chat. I wanted to give really people a call to action, but we also have resources available. So the first thing is, while you are celebrating all of the amazing holidays, please consider sponsoring refugees through the Welcome Corps program today. Start looking at the application, the requirements, the fundraising that you need to do, what it takes to do, put a group together and welcome refugees in your community. We have the available sponsor fund from private donors to support you in this effort. We do have our partnership with Airbnb with housing credit to do that work as well. We also have application support as well available for you if you are needing really support in your application. You are not alone in it. As soon as you decide, please do it. We are going to follow up with some materials that you can really benefit from to take this action, including an info session happening Monday to really share with you all of the resources available for sponsors who are ready to submit their application, just needing more information about the resources. So we will send you that information in the follow-up email. You have heard from Mark, Gregory, Leah, and Betsy. Share your why. Share why this work is important. Use your social media, but also reach out to our team at press@welcomecorps.org to share your why, because it's really important for people to understand why this work is really important to you. And advocate for continuation for this program. There is no threat to the program. Really, please take action now and submit application. We will continue to take application and we will continue to mobilize. And we really need your help to speak up, share your story, and submit your application. I am doing mine here in Jacksonville. We are actually having Sunday a Thanksgiving or friend-given dinner with a new family who arrived to Jacksonville, and we are also shaping a new sponsor group as well as we speak. So I invite you to join us in this movement. If you are in university, to take action and join this movement. If you are a business, really join this movement. And if you are a grassroots community who you want to break the loneliness, to bring refugees to your community, really take action by submitting your application today. I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoying next week a great holiday with your community. Just know that we are here and we will continue this conversation. So join us every time we invite you. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you to all of the speakers for their time.